Hallo miteinander, I'm Phoenixx and this is Kubinashi Recollection. Kubinashi translates to without a neck. Obviously only one Touhou could star in such a title, Sekibanki, the new Kekubi. Lately, we've been covering several RPGs, but this is nothing like that. It's a platformer, yet one that will tickle your brain cells just as fiercely, even without any tall numbers. The game takes place inside the dream world, where Sekibanki suspects the missing memories of Gensokians have gone to. We're going to get them back. Our closest ally on our quest is Doremi Sweet. Not only does she drive the story forward, she also has hints on various gameplay gimmicks, so long as you're far enough to encounter them. Any new player wouldn't need to know about gaps for a long time, but don't worry, I've made sure they'd find their way into this video. This game always starts you off in a hub world, so we're not in an actual level yet. Through this door though, we get a selection of many. I think 1-2 should be a good beginning. The first world, Dreamfields, is mostly a tutorial, a playground to learn the basics. Upon coming to this towering wall, we must decapitate ourselves for the first time. Not a big loss, Sekibanki has 2 more where that came from. There's another way to spend our limited head resource. We can also shoot them out. Apart from firing heads straight forward, it is also possible to launch them upwards, as we learn in this next lesson. Every level has an optional collectible in the form of a puzzle piece. This one right here was practically free, but later levels really have you working for them. And that's it for 1-2. Stages are quite short, that's why there are 50 of them. At least 50 that aren't hidden. Before we continue, let's have a look at the pause menu, specifically the Recollections tab. There's a category in it that I simply must show you, and it's fashion. Sekibanki has additional costumes that you unlock with puzzle pieces and achievements. Among my favorites is glasses. Another interesting feature of the pause menu is its map and the included fast travel. We could go to another world by foot, but warping is both more comfortable and quicker. World 2 is the bamboo forest, and 2-4 is another brief level that nonetheless exemplifies a peculiar ability our orphaned heads have. We are started off in front of a hole, but we're not meant to go down. There are spikes down there that would kill us. Spikes that are completely harmless to our spare head. The conveyor belt allows it to pick up several keys down there that are miraculously transferred into our pockets somehow. The blue key is the only one we have to grab personally, and the head will help us get back out of the tunnel. A little further beyond is an enemy, a yin-yang orb. It is possible to destroy these, but since almost all heads must be used to solve a level, combat is rarely sensible. We're done, but where was the puzzle piece? Even if you zoomed the camera around the level, you would never see it, as it's fully obscured by a green lock. Objects can overlap in this game, so don't trust only your eyes. The puzzle piece is under the first green lock right there. Your only hint is that a red lock visibly traps a yin-yang orb. You also have to avoid opening the second green lock, as you need its key near the end of the stage. It is common to get into a situation in this game where a level becomes unsolvable. Kubinashi Recollection is a puzzle platformer through and through. I'd compare it to the Mari Ari games, but it's a lot less hectic. very much a thinker's game. Costumes are often inspired by other Touhou characters. Our current choice borrows Kutaka's cute chick. Our next destination is called Azure Winter. It's the trope of the dreaded ice world. It has icy gimmicks, but thankfully no ice physics, so our very responsive controls are staying not awful. If you've been looking for a health bar, you've just seen proof that Sekibanki dies in a single hit. Always. In this kind of game, that's perfectly okay. The name of stage 3-2 is Slow and Steady. That's a bit ironic, as the ice blocks on the lower path break away shortly after we've stepped on them. Our objective is to first press the red switch on the right once, then the blue switch on the left. That deactivates all barriers in front of the exit. Once again, we first concentrated on just finishing the level. The puzzle piece was ignored. That's because getting it adds a whole other challenge. As you can see, it's right at the start, but obstructed by blocks linked to the red switch. Also, we need our trampoline head to get back up the cliff. Dropping it to the abyss ruins everything, of course. It's our only expendable head. The main idea is that we must traverse the lower path twice. The catch is that enough of the crumbling ice blocks must be kept intact for the return trip. Through pinpoint bunny hopping, we damaged only 4. Hopefully that's good enough. Maybe that's what they meant with slow and steady. They, as in the developer, is called Paradot. I've never heard of them before. If this is indeed their first game and not just their entry into the Touhou fandom, I'd be extra impressed. Not only are these incredibly smartly constructed levels, they are made with speedrunning in mind. You will get a ranking for your time after every level. However, everything above a bronze rating requires taking practically no thinking pauses. A good amount of players have criticized that the thresholds for silver, gold, and the nearly frame-perfect platinum ranks are too close together, meaning that even decent times aren't really honored. Luckily, you can ignore this feature if you're just interested in puzzle solving. Only very few rewards are tied to the speedrunning component. Neither is our next costume, which mimics the head maid of the Scarlet Devil Mansion. It might seem a bit boring at first, adding only a white headband. However, Sekibanki always opens her coat when carrying a loose head above her. Underneath will indeed be Sakuya's iconic French maid now. To the right, to the left isn't the most inspired name for a level, yet I remember 4-3 as a difficulty spike, a real head scratcher. Whenever a head stays in contact with a translucent question mark, the exclamation mark blocks are toggled off. That's when the puzzle is initiated. The blue and red crystals must be shoved into their respective empty silhouettes to succeed here. The fact that the stage looks so compact will have you in disbelief of how tricky that is to achieve. If any crystal drops to the ground floor, it's over. You'll have to hit the restart button. Only a very specific sequence of switch presses allows us to make progress, and it's just very easy to trip over our own feet. For example, when both switches are active, you would get trapped in the center bowl unless you leave a head in it. Leaving a head on a cliff next to a switch can also be a big mistake, as you won't be able to descend back down from that side. Sekibanki cannot choose to not bounce on a head when she lands on one. A good rule of thumb is that the red switch must be on when you release the blue crystal, and the blue switch should be active when the red crystal is freed. After both crystals have been deposited, we simply had to escape to the right and be disappointed by our inability to grab the puzzle piece. What did we do wrong? For the longest time, I thought the problem was bringing a head with you to the goal, but that will only lead to frustration. The true solution is to beat the puzzle with only a single head. Sounds impossible with how much we were fumbling around using two, but it can be done. There's a vital trick to making it work. It will look like the red switch must be kept on until we've snapped the blue crystal into its silhouette. But if we stop pushing just a moment before that, the crystal will be in a position where both colors of platforms could support it on their own. Then we can switch on blue, red off, have our head fall back onto the ground floor, and that's the perfect combination to make the rest of the puzzle pretty trivial. Except for this strange maneuver, I guess. The reason why the idea of bringing a second head to the exit won't get you anywhere is that the puzzle piece is too high up to trampoline for it. You have to shoot upwards at it. When I was still new to Kubinashi Recollection, I suspected you would learn to add deployed heads back to your stock at some point, but this is no Metroidvania. The rules are fixed, and any head that you throw or shoot is one you have spent in a way. So, always stop and think before you launch them. I've now shown you one stage each of the first 4 worlds. There are 10 in total. Before we proceed, we put on my #1 favorite costume. It's Shanghai, covering Sekibanki's face and eyes. Luckily, you as the player can still see her surroundings and guide her. We are only going to play one more level, and I think you want a taste of the end game. How serious does Kubinashi Recollection get with its challenges? 9-2 is one that I remember as very tough, but also really clever and motivating. If I wanted you to see my most hated one, it would have been 10-4 and its Death Fairy escort mission, but let's not sour the mood. World 9 is when the gruesome gaps foreshadowed at the start of the video first come into play. There can only ever be 2 on a map, as they are teleporters linked with one another. Furthermore, they can be carried and thrown just like heads and springs. While it's not possible to bounce on them directly, every time you teleport, you automatically leap out high from the destination gap. I think I misread our situation there as botched and didn't actually need to restart. Oh well, we had only just started this admittedly massive level. Black switches always flip all spike platforms of a level. As tiny as those spikes are, they are still lethal. The true purpose of those platforms is of course to catapult any item upward that sits on them as they flip. Now these marshmallow blocks here are a gimmick introduced in World 8, the Shining Needle Castle. Bash them from below and they will inflate up into a new position. The catch is that this transformation is irreversible. You might be fooled to think that some of these 4 must be activated and others left untouched, but the golden solution is to ignore all of them. Just jump across, push the green switch once, grab the green key and the bonus head. We are not quite done in the lower left corner. We mustn't forget to salvage the head we left up here. If you've accidentally dropped the gap on the ground floor before you retrieve the head, it is lost. Just in general, it's pretty easy to make minor, but ultimately fatal missteps in this level, like leaving items behind or jumping up a floor of the central tower when you shouldn't. it can be infuriating if you're too hasty. When only a head remains at the bottom floor, you're on the right track. The green spring we brought from the marshmallow chamber bounces Sekibanki much higher than a trampoline head. In most cases, that makes them more valuable, not necessarily in this one. Dropping it on the second lowest floor is an option, but one that forfeits the puzzle piece. For now, it's best if we leave one of the gaps behind. Since we can always teleport carrying an item, that's the safest approach. Once we open up the green lock, we are presented with a Puzzle Pieces challenge. When I first saw it floating all the way up there, I wondered if you needed cheats to get it. Of course you don't. The arrow blocks are meant to be shot with a head. The head will then be forced into the displayed direction. White switches toggle the direction on red arrow blocks. Green arrow blocks are never affected. Beating the level only requires the red key, which is easiest to get when the red arrow block points to the right. However, we're going all in, destroying the whole structure for an attempt at the puzzle piece. The bricks have revealed a couple of steps that are just low enough to reach with the green spring. Now it gets intricate. The gap we're carrying must be put into a position where we can leap up onto a higher story, but aren't forced to. We needed a sweet spot that leaves the option of only bumping our head on the ceiling. With a spring placed, we're through the worst of it. The red switch is a real blessing. It not only makes it possible to retrieve all of our items from the chamber below, it also allowed us to reach up to the puzzle piece. Man, Sekibanki in this game is a pretty pathetic jumper. Without a tool, she is actually so vertically challenged that she can't clear a wall of 2 tiles height. On the other hand, this weakness is the basis for really cool puzzles. As a kid, I often didn't like arcade and puzzle platformers, because your protagonists tended to have severely limited abilities in those. Nowadays, I know a lot of fun can be created through ineptitude. Now is the time we want to leave our spring behind. Once again about our costume. You might be wondering, why is Shanghai glued tightly to Sekibanki's face? The costume description said that she has been programmed by Alice to home in on enemies. If you think about it, Sekibanki was an enemy, a boss even, in Touhou 14's Stage 2. So you can't say the little dolly is stupid, she just didn't get the memo. Trampoline heads may seem less useful than springs and gaps, but grabbing keys for us is something only they can do. That's why it was necessary to take one this deep into the level. With a blue key in hand and 2 items, we have just enough resources to finish the stage. Nothing's optional. It took us 5.5 minutes, painfully slow, but we'll still get a bronze rank. There's no such thing as a copper or tin rank, or we would have gotten it. I remember Bayonetta would give you a stone trophy if you did really poorly. That just screams participation award, no thanks. I said 9-2 would be our last level. That doesn't mean I can't show you something else. Puzzle games may not be to everyone's taste, but here's what might win you over: a cutscene. One is shown to you whenever you complete a world, rewarding you with an adorable art style and a solemn, heartwarming mood. The cutscene of World 5 is my favorite because of this very screenshot. Kogasa Tatara goes boo. Urameshi ya in Japanese, I am sure. she gets instantly annoyed by an unfazed Sekibanki denying her a meal of surprise. While we're watching the scene unfold, I want to wrap up my thoughts on this game. I've enjoyed Kubinashi Recollection as much as I hoped, and then some. It has made me realize once again that I pretty rarely play puzzle platformers and puzzlers in general, even though when I do, I usually have a blast with them. It's a bit of a shame, and I don't know why I'm like this. Coincidentally, I was somewhat tricked into trying this one. I first learned of the game through its trailer, which has some pretty snappy editing and feels very much in motion. Playing it yourself, it's a rather methodical experience. You'll be stopping and analyzing a lot. In a way, I was deceived, but the hand-picked footage did lead to me finding another gem of 2021 as late as December. What a year this was for Touhou. What's funny is I constantly hear that 2021 was an awful year for gaming. I think it's because people look too much at the AAA scene. Excluding some positive exceptions like Metroid Dread, that one's having trouble. The worst offender is probably Activision Blizzard, a nuclear meltdown that would make even Oku jealous. For Touhou fan games and the fandom overall though, 2021 was nothing short of superb. What a contrast. I love you, Banki, Kogasa proclaims. Aww. To that, Sekibanki can't help but act like the biggest tsundere. She absolutely doesn't want affection, except that she totally does. Alright, I believe we're at the end of another episode. Kubinashi Recollection is a great exercise for thinking, feels really rewarding when you figure it out, and also looks and sounds lovely. I'm Geschichte6, bis bald!